All right, this is the first of a handful of selection tool videos. In Photoshop, one of the main things we need to know how to do is how to select objects, things within our designs. And so we're going to be taking a look at all the primary selection tools over the next few videos. And the first one we're going to learn about is the marquee selection tools. There is a rectangular marquee tool and an elliptical marquee tool. There's technically also a single row and single column one, but we aren't going to really use those. Those have very specific use cases. And so with the rectangular marquee tool, what we're going to be doing is we have to make sure we have the layers selected we want to work with. This is very, very important. And we've kind of already caught on to this. In Photoshop, the layers are super, super important. We have to be aware of what layer we are working on. If we don't pay attention to that kind of stuff, we can end up really messing up what we're trying to do. All right. And so what you're going to do is you have 3 different selections you're going to be making out of our squirrel. And so I'm going to click on my squirrel layer, and I'm going to go ahead and start off by making a square. You just hold down the shift key and just grab a square of the squirrel. I don't really care what part of it you grab, and then just do Control C, Control V. And what that actually did is it pasted that squirrel in as a new layer. And so we can bring that over here. If you're really paranoid or about the sizing or it bugs you, just hold down Control T, and then you can resize that object to fit onto that space. Okay. And so that's our first one. Now, with the rectangular marquee tool, we can actually select more than one square. So if I click and I drag and I make one square, all right, if I go to make a second one, it's going to get rid of my first one. But if I hold down the shift key, notice that there's a little plus next to that little point, and now I can click and drag another square, and it's going to make 2 squares and combine them together. Okay. Holding down shift is going to be more of an additive function. And so we're going to now be able to do Control C. It says it didn't work, right? That's because I didn't have my squirrel layer selected. So make sure you're on the squirrel layer, Control C, Control V. And then again, we go back to our move tool in Photoshop, not the selection tool. And we can bring that in if we want. We can resize it. Not a big deal if you don't want to resize it, but you can resize it. So why not, right? And now for our last one, again, we got to make sure we're on the squirrel layer. And we're going to click and we're going to make our first square. Now, instead of holding down shift, you're going to hold down the Alt key. And that's going to be a subtractive function. And you're going to be able to come in, hold down Alt. It's going to take that part out of our selection. We're on the squirrel layer. We can hit Control C, Control V, and then move that sucker down. And we've got our 3 square sections. Now, it's going to be the same functioning with the elliptical marquee tool. So let's take a look at that one now. Okay. So we need to make sure we're on the squirrel layer. We're going to click and hold on the rectangular marquee tool for the elliptical one. And then we're going to just hold down shift, on the squirrel layer, not on the, Control D will deselect, or you can click on this deselect option if you've ever made a selection you want to get rid of. So we fixed that. And now we're going to go ahead and do Control C, Control V. And then we're going to move that down. Same thing. So we'll grab one circle, hold down shift, make another circle. And now these are going to be combined. And then again, we got to make sure we're on our squirrel layer, Control C, Control V. And then we can just drag that down. And then for our last one, we're on the squirrel layer. We're going to make our first circle. Now we're going to hold down Alt, make our second circle where it's going to cut out this time. Let's try that again. I held down Alt and Shift. There we go. And then Control C, Control V. And now we can bring this down and we have our third circle. Once we have these 3 done, then we can save it. Just like in Illustrator, we want to save things to the cloud, but we also want to save things as a PDF to submit for our final submissions. So we just keep going and rock through it.